Here this afternoon with LeeAnn Bennett. She is former NCBC president, and I'm having a conversation with her about her term of office. LeeAnn, thank you so much for agreeing to sit down with me for this conversation.
My pleasure.
And let's start with your career in the bankruptcy court. Did you have other positions in the court before you became clerk, or did you come from a different background?
I feel like I grew up in the court. I have almost 29 years now in the bankruptcy courts. I started out of college working for a Chapter 7 trustee. Stayed there maybe 2 years before moving to the court, and got a job with the Middle District of North Carolina, working as a Chapter 11 case manager, back when you had chapter case managers, not case managers doing all chapters.
I remember that.
Moved up from there to becoming a courtroom deputy. Got married, left the court after 3.5 years, moved to Florida, and came back to the court in Florida in 1990, and have held many positions: case manager, supervisor, deputy in charge, chief deputy, and now clerk.
All right. When did you join the NCBC?
I'm pretty sure I was a member back in North Carolina.
Okay.
North Carolina Middle, you might remember Linda Ball was very involved and very much supported the organization and encouraged staff to join. And then when I came back into the court, I rejoined.
Good.
So I've been a member for a long, long time.
What was your, you mentioned that Linda was always very supportive, and she was, but personally, why did you feel like it was important to join the NCBC?
I think it is a great organization that cares about its members. And even before I was in management, I knew they cared about me. And they offered training opportunities and benefits that I don't think you get anywhere else.
Okay. In the NCBC itself, did you hold other offices before you became president? And were you in the committee structure as part of a committee?
I was, and I think the year was 2007. I was approached by Barry Lander and Ken Gardner and Ken Hers and Mark Hatcher, encouraging me to become a host court. And we then held the conference in 2009.
Yes.
And we held it in St. Pete. It was a challenge in itself because I don't have an office in St. Pete.
Yes.
The closest office was Tampa, which was 20 miles away. But I was so involved as being the host court that it made me want to get involved at a different level. So the year after that conference, I ran for the board.
Yes. And
became a board member.
Okay.
So I've been on the board starting, it was right after that conference, so 2009. I did the benefits committee, I've done the awards committee, education committee before I became president.
Okay. And that was a great conference. The Vinoy.
Other than the rain, it rained every day.
But the Vinoy is a hard hotel to top, and you didn't mind being reined in at the Vinoy.
We just so hated it because it's such a nice city to walk around in. But
yes,
those things happen.
All right, let's turn to your term as vice president and then as president. What were some of the issues that were before the organization during those years?
You know, I think we faced some challenges. As you know, John Horner was the president when we were going to St. Louis, and we had some budget woes, so we had a much smaller conference. So the organization was very much involved with what was happening with the bankruptcy courts. The shared service cut came around that time, and how do you deal with those issues? What support can you give to your members, especially the clerk members, as they're facing budget issues? Right after that, too, I think the most challenging thing for me was change. We had a lot of change in the organization and our structure. And by that I mean we had a business manager who had been with us and supported us for many, many years, Celia. And we decided that we should post certain positions, our staff positions, because it's always good to have change.
Yes.
And so we posted not only your position as historian, but also the business manager position.
Yes.
And we got lots of good applications, and it was a very tough decision to decide that it was time to have a new business manager. And that difficult conversation for someone who had supported us for so long, that was really hard for me.
Yes.
The other very difficult thing I think we dealt with as a board was we changed our insurance broker. And again, it's always good to see who's going to give you the most benefit for the organization. Where are you going to make the most money so that you can stay viable as an organization? And so again, we bid for that service. And Gallagher had been our partner for many, many, many years, provided us great service. And we might have continued with Gallagher, but we knew we needed to go out and bid to see who really could provide us the most. And so we made the change to Fed Advantage. And again, not only the time it took to review the packages that were submitted, but also that difficult conversation to have with someone who didn't get the business and who didn't continue with the business.
Yes. As you say, we did go through a lot of changes around that time with the organization, and you alluded to some of the system-wide, court-wide issues that were going on. How did the organization deal with some of those system-wide issues, or if they chose not to, talk a little bit about that as well? Because there was a lot of change in the
There were a lot of
system-wide
changes.
court system.
A lot of times what we did is we worked hand in hand with NCBJ. And if we knew they were going to respond to an issue, we would add our support to the response. In fact, NCBJ invited me to become part of their legislative committee.
Yes.
Because they understood the importance of funding in the judiciary. And so I've been with them now, I think, on 4 trips to the Hill to visit with members of Congress and to really let Congress know, number one, that we appreciate the funding they provide us, but number two, to answer their questions. What are we doing for cost containment? How does technology in the bankruptcy courts really save money? And our meetings have been well received. I've been, like I said, 4 times. Ken Hers has gone, as well as Gina Thomas, and we pair with the judges. And it will be 2 to 3 of us who will go visit a member of either the House or the Senate. And this past time, we actually talked about not only the funding of the judiciary, but the need to continue the temporary judgeships to make them permanent.
Yes. Talking about our relationship with the NCBJ, that goes back a long way. NCBC and NCBJ have always had a very cordial relationship, sometimes maybe a little closer or a little, I won't say further apart, but our interests have diverged in some. But in the last few years, especially since you've been working with them on the legislative committee, do you feel like that our 2 organizations have grown closer together?
Absolutely. This year alone, they used to only invite the president to their conference. This year, they're inviting the past president and the president. They formed a committee last year, and Judge Mann out of California was the chair of that committee to come up with ways to how we can support each other and how we can help each other. And so she worked closely with us. You might have remembered she came to our board meeting last year during the conference and came up with some ideas. We did, you might remember last year, a judge panel that included an NCBJ person to talk about how they want to support what's going on in the clerk's office, not just on a judge level, but they understand the need to support the clerks.
And that can only work extremely well in our favor and in their favor too.
Absolutely. And they clearly want to continue that relationship.
That's great. Well, you mentioned John Horner. Let's go back to that for just a moment. You were vice president. John was president of the NCBC. He took a very sudden and unexpected retirement.
Yes, he did.
And catapulted you into the presidency of the organization. If you would talk a little bit about that transition time and how you dealt with that unexpected situation.
That definitely was a challenge, something I was not anticipating. I have a large court for a bankruptcy court, So I have my own challenges at home to deal with. And I'm a planner, so I plan my year and what I'll be involved with. So I'll never forget, it was, we were outside, it was right after the conference, and John contacted me and said, I need to let you know that I'm not going to continue as president. So he served 1 year, so I took over his last year. As you know, the presidency is a 2-year term.
Yes.
So I took over a year early. At first it was shock. It was, oh my God, what do I do now? Because I think when you're vice president, your first year, you're learning what's going on. Your
Yes.
second year is when you get a little more involved and you start saving stuff so you don't forget what you need to be doing. So I sort of lost that opportunity, but the transition was much easier than I thought. And the reason for that was the support that I got, not only from John, even though he retired, he still sent me all his documents. And then I had Ken Hurds, who was a godsend, because Ken keeps everything. And he sent me all his files. He was available to talk at any time. Eileen was the secretary still, and she was helpful. Eddie keeps everything also. And so the support was tremendous and made my job very easy. I did have to name a vice president or president-elect. No time to vote on that. I just had to put someone in place.
Yes.
I had worked with Gina Thomas for years. I knew that she was excellent, and I asked her, and she had just become a board member, so I challenged her. I think really more challenge for her than to me, because she was a brand new board member. I had the opportunity of having served on the board for many years, so I knew a lot more about how the organization ran. But she accepted and did a great job and also offered her support. So that just made it so much easier.
Well, I think it was kind of a challenging time for all of us, because not only did John retire, but we lost one of our board members because her job suddenly went away.
Yes.
We lost another board member to some unfortunate situations in his court. And it was just kind of unsettling, I think, for all of us. But I have to say, if you were scared to death, you certainly hit it well.
I was scared.
Because you handled everything in a very calm and professional manner, and if I have not thanked you for that before, I will thank you now. Because it was a time of uncertainty, not only within the court system with so many people losing their positions, but certainly an unsettled time in the NCBC, and we have weathered it, carried on.
And my whole time that I've been, not only as president, but on the board, I think what stands out to me is the quality of the people who serve on the board, the quality of the staff. They give so much of their time, and I think sometimes our membership doesn't realize how much time it takes and how devoted they are. And they do that because I think, like we do, they care about the bankruptcy community. And it's such a great organization. I think about during my term, we also hired a new webmaster.
Yes.
And he has done a tremendous job. And I think people can see that when they look at the website. We just have a great team. It makes my job and any president's job so much easier.
I would not disagree with you about that. It is a good team, a great team, and I think our membership is served well by the organization.
I think what also is encouraging, every time we do elections, the number of people who want to serve.
Yes.
And as we just talked in our board meeting recently, the importance of, even if they don't make, if they're not selected as a board member or an officer, that there's still the opportunity to serve. And we need to reach out and make sure they have that opportunity to serve as well.
We've kind of talked around it, but, and I think I know what your answer is going to be, but do you feel that the NCBC as an organization is a viable representative of the interests of the bankruptcy community?
Absolutely. We put the interest above all else. We are, even when you look at who members are, not only on the board, but just memberships, and they are serving at national levels. We have people who are on BFACT. We have people who are on BCAG. We have people who are on working groups. We have most of the steering committee members as members of this organization who are involved in work measurement. That is a tremendous amount of talent. And it's a great way to have say in what's going on in the community. And they bring that back to us, and they allow us to stay involved.
Right. You know, one thing that we didn't really touch on when we were talking about change, but for the first time in really decades, the administrative office itself underwent a huge reorganizational change, which was just something else added to the mix. And I think it spoke well for our organization, and also I'm sure for FCCA, but particularly for our organization, that the people that I would consider leaders in the bankruptcy community were called on and called in and were given positions or on these committees, as you spoke about, and were asked for their expertise in the AO's reorganization, and I think that speaks extremely well.
Absolutely, and when you look at the partnership we have with the AO and how they don't need to be involved with us. They could easily say that they don't have time to be involved and to support our programs, but they're here every year. And they're not only the AO, but the FJC. And they offer classes. They don't hesitate to travel and make sure that they're here to answer questions. And they're not, you know, our organization is mainly not the leaders in the court. It's everybody in the court. So when you have the leaders at the AO willing to come and address our membership, I think it says how they view our membership as well.
Right. Well, going forward, we have a fantastic history, and I didn't stop to count it up, but I think we're like 36 years old now. Is that right?
I'll accept that.
Moving toward our 40th anniversary, which just astounds me, you know. But going forward as an organization, how do you think the NCBC can continue to serve the interests of our members and the bankruptcy community, and in particular in the stated mission that we have in the areas of leadership, advocacy, and education?
Well, first, I think leadership, we will continue with MSU, and that is a great way to have new leaders in the court. And just from the graduation this morning, you saw how many people are involved and continue to want to be involved.
Yes.
Education, one of the things I did during my term was start the outreach committee. And the idea was, let's find ways to offer education, not just at the conference, because not every court can fund staff to come to the conference, and even when they can't allow but so many to come based on the needs back home.
Yes.
So how can we educate going forward in the future? In today's world of technology, we should be using that to offer education not only at this conference, but while they're sitting at their desk. And even though FJC offers a lot of that, and we have Blackboard and those type opportunities, I think there are opportunities out there that we should be tapping. We also want to do that with our benefits, and we have a great partner in Jim Delatorre and Fed Advantage. We're just this year, I think the report was he went out to 60 courts where health fairs and offered training. He is willing to continue that training in the benefits area. I can see where we could offer that online as well. So I think really our future is not only building leaders, but continuing to offer that education. Even for those who may not stay in our court, let's give them the skills necessary to go out and get the jobs they desire.
Right. And what about, certainly as the bankruptcy positions have shrunk over the last few years, and probably in all reality will continue to shrink as technology takes over more and more of the day-to-day things, but for those who are still employed by the court, how can we advocate for them?
I think we need to continue to keep our pulse on the button. We need to know what's going on at a national level so that we can see how it would affect them. And then we need to be very proactive. I'm very concerned about the cost containment issues that we're looking at today. I'm concerned about the outcome of some of the studies that are taking place. But the more that we can give our input into those areas, that's how we're going to advocate for them.
And I think we are still on a firm footing. We have the largest attendance we have ever had at a conference during this conference that we're halfway through now. It seems like we just started and we're already halfway through. But I want to thank you for your leadership. Thank you for sitting down with me this morning and talking about your term. And it's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much.